And all this time, I thought the world was round. The world is not round. It has edges we can fall from and faces staring in entirely different directions. And I thought the world was huge, but it is not. It's in our hands. We can hold it, change it, turn it, shake it. We can solve it, but not by sheer luck or chance. We must be taught the way.
In the great big universe of things to criticize, hope is an unlikely choice. What kind of jerk doesn't think hope is a good thing? Hope is positive. Hope is encouraging. Hope is a flicker of light in the vast sea of darkness, the very opposite of despair. Being anti-hope is like being anti-birthday cake, or anti-kindness, or anti-social change. A confession. I committed voter fraud during the 2008 presidential election. My son, 3 years old at the time, was excited about Obama. Who could blame him? We all were. So when he pleaded with me, asked if he could vote for Obama, I didn't have the heart to refuse. So I snuck him into the voting booth while the stern-looking poll worker attended to other matters, let him punch the Obama box, and snapped a cute picture of him in all of his post-voting glory. Even I, with my distrust of electoral politics, felt inspired by Obama, the man who brought a message of hope and change. Here's his 2004 address to the Democratic National Convention.
Hope in the face of difficulty, hope in the face of uncertainty, the audacity of hope. I believe that we can give our middle class relief and provide working families with a road to opportunity. I believe we can provide jobs to the jobless, homes to the homeless, and reclaim young people in cities across America from violence and despair. I believe that we have a righteous wind at our backs, and that as we stand on the crossroads of history, we can make the right choices and meet the challenges that face us.
I believed in this man, the child of an immigrant, who understood that the story of U.S. immigrants is a story of U.S. poverty, that the people who toil in the nation's fields and kitchens are not a drain on the economy, they're the very backbone of it. I came of age politically in a moment in which there was no shortage of things to protest and few victories to count among them. Feeling hopeful for a change was nice. But can hope lead us down a dangerous path? A path that shackles us to the status quo while creating the illusion we're doing something to change it? Barbara Ehrenreich, a political activist best known for her book Nickel and Dimed on Not Getting By in America, a report on the struggles of the working poor in the United States, recently turned her attention to the pink ribbon culture surrounding breast cancer patients. In Bright-Sided, a book sparked by her own experience with cancer, Ehrenreich argues that the approach espoused by the Pink Ribbon campaign, the positive attitude is the best chemotherapy approach, is both damaging and dangerous. How? Well, if the power of wishful thinking has the potential to cure cancer, then not getting well must be a result of one's own shortcomings, a byproduct of a deficiency in one's outlook. Ehrenreich also points out that this approach abandons an analysis of root causes. By shifting our focus inward, it turns our attention away from the cancer-causing agents in our environment, for example, and the multinational corporations that produce, market, and profit off of those carcinogens. It situates cancer as an isolated illness, as opposed to acknowledging the pathologies of power Paul Farmer talks about, the structural violence that enables pathogens to take hold in impoverished communities and malnourished bodies. Ehrenreich's critique of this positive thinking culture begs a critical question. Is being bright-sided when it comes to solving the world's poverty and inequality pushing us forward or holding us back? In recent years, scholars concerned with the alleviation of global poverty have begun to situate hope as an anti-poverty intervention. Esther Duflo, the director of the Poverty Action Lab at MIT, is a world-renowned economist known for questioning conventional wisdom and making critical poverty interventions. Recently, Duflo has turned her attention to something much less quantifiable: the importance of hope in poverty action. In a recent interview, Duflo said, "Something I am becoming increasingly convinced of is that part of the problem for the poor is their perspective on what's possible. Sometimes the rational response may be to hold back and not to try. Giving people opportunities for themselves or for their children so they can aspire to something different can start a virtuous circle." The virtuous circle Duflo mentions is an economic term referring to a complex chain of events in which one desirable development contributes to the successful outcome of the next. Taken together, these events can create a positive feedback loop, resulting in economic growth. Duflo then is suggesting that a change in outlook on the part of the poor can help create a change in their circumstances. At first glance, we might see this as empowering for the poor. They have the ability to change this dynamic. But hold on, is poverty their problem? I think we need to be clear. The poverty problem is not in poor people's heads. It's in the global commodity chain, in the practices David Harvey calls accumulation by dispossession, in the connective threads between the core and the periphery, to borrow from Saskia Sassen. And hope cannot solve the poverty problem. Hope doesn't fill an empty belly. It doesn't make poisoned fields fertile again. It doesn't challenge the international mutual dependency between the global south and the global north. So how do we sort this out? My reflections on the politics of hope are rooted in my work as a researcher who spent the last 10 years learning from undocumented youth activists. Undocumented youth, kids from immigrant families who live in the United States without legal clearance to do so, grow up here, but as of now have no way to legally fix their status. They're called dreamers, after the piece of legislation that could fix their predicament by providing a path to citizenship. I'm not trying to tell the dreamer story. The dreamers have that covered without the interference of researchers. This is my own story, as a young scholar and aspiring public intellectual, and the ways in which learning from the dreamers has changed the way I think about hope. Nearly a decade ago, I sat in a room of educators discussing how we could best support our undocumented students. What we need to do, someone said, is get these kids through under the radar and keep hoping that the policies will change. The best we can do is hope. She reasoned that once enough of these stellar kids were out in the world, living, working, contributing, succeeding, the argument for citizenship would make itself. These weren't bad people. They were well-meaning, compassionate, and measured. But keeping our mouths shut and hoping things would somehow change was dangerous. I shudder to think of what might have happened, or not happened, if our students had adopted this very strategy. But of course, the students didn't. They knew that hopeful passivity would not get the goods. On the question of immigration, Obama hasn't delivered the hope he originally promised, deporting more people per year than the Bush administration. Though immigration reform is on the table, Obama didn't put it there. It's the product of years of grassroots struggle in immigrant communities, and dreamers played an important role in that development. Under the banner of undocumented, unafraid, and unapologetic, they've come out, staged sit-ins at senators' offices, blocked intersections in daring acts of civil disobedience, lobbied on Capitol Hill, and infiltrated detention centers. The dreamers remind us that there are different kinds of hope. There is a hope that gives us permission to sit back and wait. It's a hope of complacency. It admits that these problems are too big for us to change and surmises that we're doing all we can. And then there's a kind of hope that's bold, confrontational, rooted in collective action. It's a hope that reminds us, as Frederick Douglass does, that power concedes nothing without a demand. It's a hope that pushes us to insist rather than to accept. In a post-Obama election piece, educational researcher Jeff Duncan Andrade differentiates between kinds of hope. He says, hokey hope would have us believe change will not cost us anything. This kind of false hope is mendacious. It never acknowledges pain. Audacious hope stares down the painful path. And despite the overwhelming odds against us making it down that path to change, we make the journey again and again. There is no other choice. My son is now 8. He's grown up in the immigrant rights movement. He came home from a recent march with a sign that says, "The time is now." Beyond serving as his comedic prop when requesting a snack, the sign is a reminder that we can't simply sit back and wait for an eventual change. We need action. And we do need hope, but we need a particular kind of hope. The hope that's grounded in an analysis of structures of power. A hope that pushes us outward, in community with one another, to fight for change. The question isn't, will hope end inequality? Because we know it won't. The question is, how do we harness hope in a way that makes it a tool for creation and not complacency? How do we think about hope as an ethical and political principle that shapes the way we come together to fight?